Yorana, aloha nui. I'm so honored to be here. I'm looking out at this audience very intimidated because what I talk about is the value of indigenous systems, the value of indigenous agriculture as a model for what we can be doing to regenerate our agricultural systems. And all of you who have grown up in the islands know more about it than I do. I'm just the one who talks about it. The ones who do it don't talk about it. So I'm very honored to have our panelists, Kumu Ramsay again for part 2 of his being on a panel. And we have Kupuna Danny on our panel. If you could please join us. I'm going to do this panel a little bit differently. I'm going to present a little bit of a context and then a question. And then we'll have answers to the question, and then we'll go to another little bit of context. I think the imagery will really help because we've forgotten our relationship in this modern world to the natural world. And so it's very important. That is the source of how we relate to the natural world. And every Pacific Island culture has multiple stories about the kuru, about the ulu, that are embedded in the culture, embedded in the way we think about ulu, embedded in every action we take related to ulu. And so this is the story presented by one of our artists for one of our festivals of Ku. Ku dove into the earth to save his starving community. And what came out was the ulu tree. And he said, everybody will be fed by the ulu as long as you share me. And I believe we can all dive into nature now. We all have dived into nature to learn about how to interact with nature in a holistic way, and actually with no technology whatsoever except what we have on board, create incredibly abundant systems. No inputs. It's all right here. And so sustainability, we all know, if you look, sustainability, which has been our working principle for years, is actually not working anymore. We are not sustainable. We are not achieving sustainability. The Sustainable Development Goals are not being achieved. Sustainability is not a viable goal because we don't really want to sustain what we've got going here. Everything we do now has to improve the environment, improve our relationships to the environment, to ourselves, and as Uncle Brother said yesterday, to our communities. So the new goal is regeneration. Now, any new concept can be co-opted by the mainstream. We know mainstream colonial thinking is a co-opting machine. So I would like to propose and discuss what regeneration really means in the Pacific, because I think the Pacific is a potential source for innovative transformation of how we grow our food, how we take care of the environment, continually improving. And the experts in this are the people of the Pacific. And I, as Dr. Tena said, people like me, white guys, come here to advance our knowledge, which I am guilty of. And I've learned from all these people and many, many more. These people actually know how to do it. They have an onboard ability to observe and interact with nature in a regenerative way that not only sustains the environment, but improves it continually. And so they have PhDs in care of the environment. So I'd like to present this little example, which I show all the time. This is from Samoa, but you can find this all over the Pacific. This is a breadfruit agroforest. Now, to the monoculture mind, you look at this and you say, that is just total chaos. I do not understand that. What is happening there? I think I'm going to bulldoze that and turn it into a monoculture. But I don't see many people who didn't grow up with this in this audience, but for those who didn't, we can break it down and start looking at what's going on here. We can start looking at the layers of species that are growing in harmony with each other. Competition is not nature's way. Nature's way is collaboration and regeneration continually. So here's the first question. I'm going to sit here. Actually, Uncle Mike was going to join us, so we have an empty chair again for all of those who are not present. And so I would like to ask to tease out this concept of regenerative, which is something of a Western concept at this point, and ask you, what does regenerative agriculture really mean? And what are some of the tangible and intangible outcomes?
Okay. Kia ora again, everyone. When Craig came to ask me to be on this panel of regenerative agriculture, especially for the breadfruit, I just met with Doug Hess with his farming, a quarter acre of land with all the different crops, and he showed me the garden, and I saw the concept of regenerative farming. And then when I was asked to do the same presentation or be part of the panel for that type of farming, but with breadfruit, I had to ask Craig, what does regenerative farming mean? And then he talked about, planting the kuru, and as you saw in the picture, all the different crops, and all of them working together, helping one another, all these plants, collaborating. I said, that's how our ancestors used to plant. Oh, easy, I know now. So I looked at regeneration. I keep thinking, who invented that word? It had to be an English word. They even have English professors still studying English. And I'm sure they don't have a clue what regenerative means. For somebody who invented the word and not have a plantation, to come and tell us this is a new thing. And once I got the concept, no, that's not your thing. We already been planting that thing like that. You just came up with a new word so that you can own it. No, that's our way of planting. So anyway, so really I appreciate the time when Dr. Tusi came to us, Pifon family, in 2016, and he recommended, first of all, when he recommended that the trees be 30 meters apart. And as soon as he said that, oh my goodness, nobody gonna plant this thing. Because I had a monocropping mind that was instilled in my brain since my childhood when we were planting oranges. Bulldozer everything, plant oranges only. Bulldozer the whole mountain, fill it up with pineapple. And we did that. I got pictures with me and my cousin, my grandfather, with a whole pile of pineapple like that. All monoculture. So when he said 30 meters apart, when here you saw us here in Rarotonga, when you have a quarter acre piece of land, you're happy. But you got a bulldozer that put a house on, put a septic tank on, that's a quarter acre of land lost from agriculture. So when he said 30 meters, it's gonna fail. But then he said, you can also plant in between. We can work with that. And then the more he spoke, the more I realized That's how we were planting. When our ancestors sailed on the Waka, going from island to island, they take a lot of plants. But the three main plants they take, noni, coconut, and breadfruit. Noni, coconut, breadfruit. No matter how many times they go to that island, they take those three. And as soon as the Waka land, they plant those three plants. That's why every single island in the Pacific, whether there's people on, no people on, you will find those three trees. And you will survive on any of those islands. All you need is a knife. That's all you need. Then you will survive. You can peel, you do lots of things. Yeah, and a lighter if you don't know how to make fire. Yeah, but isn't that beautiful? Today, I believe if we go back to those three, not only will be food security, also economic benefit. I went to Tahiti a few years ago. I went into the Monoi factory. I have never seen a waterfall of coconut oil. A waterfall from here to the end of that table, Monoi oil, boom, coming out. Economic benefit from the coconut. We used to export coconut, no more. Sri, noni, even the marketing of the noni has been going down, but the benefit of it is still there. So now we're talking about the breadfruit. Isn't that interesting? Interesting. My three main products in my business, noni, breadfruit, coconut. By the way, all the nui you drank last night, yeah, that's from my trees. So thank you for your contribution. You got a sneaky way of making money out of these conferences.
Monetize.
Yes, that's the word I learned from Ramsay. Instead of monetizing it, you monetize it. Manao de kuru. Hey.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, I forgot, what was your question?
You gave a brilliant answer.
Oh, okay, I answered. Okay, thank you.
What he said. It's important because we're talking about language again. And like he said, somebody else came up with the word for our practice, their word for our practice, the way nature is. It's almost, how do you get back to that? I don't know that we can go back anywhere, but how do we pull it forward? How do we bring that forward? And it's no different than us talking about the succession planning of mentoring our children. There was a time when the mo'opuna, the grandchildren, spent time with the kupuna. So the passing of the information was, but then we separated them. That's the disconnect. Regeneration is, you take the word re off, it's generation. Take re off, generation. We are multi-intergenerational. If we want to know what regeneration looks like, look in the mirror. Because we couldn't be here unless we were regenerating. The Pilikia, the problem is that we have gotten in between the process of generation. The rain, ocean, hydrology, goes up, lands, comes down. Goes up, lands, goes, regeneration. But at some point we put something in between the rain and the aina. So the water no longer percolates, no longer comes out. And then we have to find out, maybe we need to bring the water back on. Desalination. Right? We call it desalination. But it was water that was already on the aina that we let go to the ocean because we made hard surfaces. We made drains. And instead of allowing the water to go into the earth, percolate, regenerate, we send it to the ocean. Poho, waste. Oh, good idea. Let's desalinate, bring it back on the ocean, on the Aina. We had the resource, the vai already we work with it. So we go back to kupuna practices. Tolo'i, which captures the water, slows it down, begins to cleanse the water. Phytoremediation. That then feeds a fish. The fish feed us. And we feed the fish. Regeneration. See, it's stuff we've always been doing. So really the way to get back to regeneration is get out of the way. We need to stop meddling and working with nature. Yeah, go back to working with Mother and bring the mo'opuno and the kupuno together again. Because until then, we have to translate. And they never see, they never hear, they don't get to hana. They don't get to do it. Nanai, we have to watch. If we don't get to see, we don't get to know. Ika nana no ike, they need to be able to observe Papa, Tutu, yeah, which is Aina. Yeah. And if they're not on the Aina, they'll never nana. They'll never be able to see. So regeneration is regeneration. Get the generations working together again. That's regeneration. Eo?
Yeah, Ayo, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. So you touched on several things that I really would like to go deeper into. So worldwide, if you look at the conventional view of regenerative agriculture, these are the goals. There's a consensus around the world around these goals. Every single one of these goals is met through indigenous food forests of the Pacific. Every single one of these. Building soil health year after year. We don't deplete our soils, we build it year after year. We optimize, so Ramsay just talked about water, the hydrologic cycle being broken because we're not holding water on the land anymore. We're letting it run off the hard surfaces, and even our agriculture has become a hard surface in many places. So optimizing water infiltration, holding on to water, which is what nature does naturally. If we go away, all of this will turn back into a regenerated, abundant, productive system, although it's not necessarily what we want. Nature always is tending towards accumulation and more abundance. Enhancing biodiversity. We know biodiversity is under threat from humans right now. There's something like 50 species lost per day. Some people say 200 per day. That's all due to our activity. So these systems are incredibly biodiverse. As Diane said, her new planting has 120 different intended species. That doesn't even talk about all the birds, the insects, the soil life, everything. There's thousands of species. Support ecosystem resilience. So again, as Tony was talking about yesterday, the main adaptation goals for climate change are resilient systems. Systems that can take weather extremes, that can take stressors like wind, drought, all kinds of things. And so these systems are resilient in their nature. And finally, sequester carbon, which is a fancy word for accumulating organic matter. And again, in the colonial mind, at least in the United States, clearing off organic matter is the first thing people do when they buy a piece of land. That's nature's bank. That's nature's reserves. That's its storage. That is its future food. And so sequestering carbon, building organic matter is something we need to be doing continually. And these systems do. So I want to dive a little bit deeper, and I know time is of a little bit short, but I would like to ask, if we go to an example, again, Samoa, and we look at the island of Upolu, a green island, which is essentially still full of agroforests, and then upland native forests. The coastal areas are fairly healthy and so forth. And you get a little bit closer, and you go in, you see all these agroforests, everybody's doing it. You have a healthy, diverse ecosystem that works for everyone. The hydrologic cycle's working, biodiversity, essentially, it's supporting all life. And then you go into Apia, and you see right in the midst of people, I grew up in an urban area, I grew up in Silicon Valley. You won't see this there. This is a traditional agroforest right in the midst of Apia. So the question is, and this is, I think, a very deep question we need to ponder, how did the Samoans and other Pacific Islanders, like Mangaya, keep these systems? Why do they still have them? I think that's a very important question to figure out. How do they manage in this modern world to still have this? So would you either one of you like to tackle that?
It's, I believe it's because of family. When you grow up with your mom and dad, and then your grandparents are there, and they have that knowledge and appreciation of the food that surrounds you, and it's a tradition, as we teach those to our children, then that mana is passed on. Sometimes I think it's better for them to stay home than to go to school, because what they're learning most of the time from school is destroy. Like you said, you see this beautiful, ecosystem, and they see rubbish. So they bulldoze it. I mean, when I say they, it also includes me. So why they still have it, I think, is because of the family unit. So when they grow old, they remember, they treasure those moments with their parents, and they continue that tradition to their children. So it's no matter you build a high-rise building there, but you will still see the family memories still growing in the yard. I think it's an opinion, but I know, because I still treasure my childhood life with my grandparents, even though the belt and the hose and the rope was something I hated. Mind you, I'm all right. Nothing wrong with me today. Yeah, that's my opinion, I think.
Thank you. Would you like to?
I'll go back to spending time with my grandparents, because their yards look like this. Today, our yards don't look like this. They call them yards. Period. But I heard the ambassador from Vanuatu once, and it stuck with me. He said, unless it's a lived experience, it's just a claim. I've not lived in Samoa, so I can't make any claims for Samoa. I have to aloha my kupuna from Samoa. But from what I've experienced, maybe the other question is, how come we didn't do that? That's what I understand. And I think, brother, you just mentioned it. It comes down to our values, the principles and our practices, and whether they're aligned with one another. They're misaligned today. This is why we need Ho'oponopono, to realign ourselves with Aina. Why we didn't do it in Hawaii? It's because we may have the value of water. We may have the value of Aina. But our priorities are off. This is a conflict in priorities, not a conflict in values. How do we know what our values are? Priorities are? We're selling concrete, not food. We clear land to build buildings. Our priority says we're willing to ship the food in from someplace else. We all value food, but our priorities of who's making, and who's growing, and who's eating the food, we have a priorities conflict. I think these communities that have maintained it have stuck to the priority of feeding themselves, feeding their next generation, where we've made the priority of how much can I buy? How much can I increase your ability to buy somebody else's food? That's the metric of success. It's not how much food am I producing. Our kupuna were rewarded for not what they kept, but what they gave away. Today we're rewarded for what we keep for ourselves and not what we give to other people. Huli. So I think we in Huli, the priority of what the community is. Yeah. And so I think that's why we didn't do it and haven't been doing it, while those here in the Pacific have continued to do that. They got their priorities straight. Hopefully we don't lose them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Do you want to hear what the Samoans told me in 2019?
Please.
I was in a room, Auntie Shirley was there, Doc Tusi, of traditional elders, farmers, just like this room. I asked them that question because it just fascinates me. And I think you both hit the nail on the head. They said, if we lose this, we lose who we are. It's as simple as that. And so that made me think, who are we? What is our priority? What is sacred to us? And I want to just review what happened to our nature, our relationship with nature. And just briefly, because of time, this is a moment in time where this British botanist, documented his experience of Kona, where I live. I live in the old field system where incredibly abundant food was produced at the time of Archibald Menzies. And so his notebooks document what happened in Kona. And he remarks, these are incredible farmers. This is the most abundant, beautiful food system I've ever seen. And then in the next chapter, he says, all we have to do is put these people to work on our plantations, everything will be good. And so there was a moment in time when Hawaiians, and this has happened all around the world, shifted. And so plantation agriculture, which Koule mentioned, died 7 years ago. The company, Alexander and Baldwin, shut this down. This is on Maui. And so now what happens when there's no more agroforests? Well, you have to work for money, and Hawaii became the largest exporter of food per capita in the world in the mid-1800s. And so this process over the past 150 years has led to our current agricultural system, which is producing about a third of greenhouse gases. The growing distribution, processing of food is producing about a third of the gases in the atmosphere, which is making it harder to grow food. And Lanai Island is a great example of what's happened around the world. This was a green island where people lived all around. Sugar cane. This is right next to Lahaina, by the way. The clouds of Lahaina used to stretch across the ocean to Lanai, right? And then the plantations came, sugar plantation, then pineapple plantation, no longer feasible. Then it was left to the axis deer and sheep. And so now it's a windswept desert island owned by one of the richest men in the world. So we have 12 million hectares on Earth that's turning to desert every year. So I wanted to bring this home because everything we do needs to be for the purpose of regeneration. Sustainability is no longer a feasible goal. Forget about it. And our monoculture mindset, I'm using this example, but it's going to lead somewhere, started a long time ago, as you know, and cotton is the kind of poster child for the toxic destruction of the earth. Cotton uses more chemicals than any other crop, herbicides, insecticides, fertilizers, and so forth. And so we do this system, and then we have to, because we're losing our soil, we're degenerating, we're losing soil, we've lost biodiversity, we've lost accumulation of organic matter, our soils are depleted. We end up having to spray more and more. So essentially what we've said is to nature is, if you don't like our system, we are going to kill you, whatever is disturbing us. So we have the largest army of soldiers in the world who are working against nature. That is our farmers who do this. And in turn, the companies who buy this stuff are farming the farmers. And so you might have read recently, there's a lot of Indian cotton farmers who are so in debt, they're committing suicide. And so when we started the Ulu project in 2010, with Diane and other people, all we wanted to talk about was indigenous, regenerative breadfruit farming. Indigenous bread, we always talked about that. But within 3 years, I'm going to skip that. Within 3 years, we had this. And this was funded by the state of Hawaii, Department of Agriculture, with more money than they gave us to do what we were doing. And so this is the monoculture mindset in action. And if I just go back to this slide, just real briefly, every crop that has been put into monoculture has more and more disease than in a diverse system. So you won't find real significant pest problems on crops in mixed agroforests. But if you put kava, noni, banana, papaya into monoculture, as Dr. Scott Nelson has studied, you get more and more problems. So I just want to remind everybody, if nobody said it yet, that what people are doing with breadfruit here is going to cause more and more pest problems, likely, than have ever been seen with breadfruit. And it will affect everyone, whether you're doing it in monoculture or in a mixed system. All right. So here's the question. We can do this one quickly because I know. Okay, we're short on time. Actually, why don't we? I think we know what happened. What happened? We've talked about that enough. I want to go on because I want to talk about how people learn how to grow regenerative agroforests. How do people actually learn that? And for those of us who didn't grow up that way, it's kind of a remediation process or something like that, rehabilitation. But how do people learn how to do it in a regenerative way? They might not even think of it as regenerative, but they know it's going to go on for generations.
I think we talked about it already, Craig. The idea is that unless I know where my food comes from, I'm not going to learn that process. Right? So as long as I think, and I'm brought up to believe that fruits and vegetables comes from the store, right? Or that eggs or milk comes from a store, this notion of regenerative farming, period, isn't going to happen. We have to actually do it. And if you're not doing it, it's just a claim, right? So I think that's how we learn it, because we have to do it. It goes back to, how do we connect mother to child? And mother is waiting for us to come home. And we keep sending our children away. It's the go away mentality. And it's breaking up the family. So how do we bring the family together again? Regeneration is simply ohana farming. How do we get the plants to grow together again? You know, that's what it is. Yeah. Got it.
On Thursday, one of our stops when we go on a field trip, we'll be stopping at Doug's quarter-acre regeneration farming, where he's planted long-term crops and then also planted crops where you can earn some money, which is exactly what you're doing. You know what the question is asking. So how do we make this so that we can still have food on our table? What I saw on his farm was you got every vegetable there growing, and the scrap, throw it for the pigs, and also put it back in the ground. And he doesn't use paraquat or Roundup because of the rubbish he keeps piling on each seed. He taught me a lesson when I first saw him. The more plowing we do, the more we open the seed banks of the weeds. So if we keep weeding by hand and leave the soil alone, and we just keep putting new plant material on, the seed banks stay close. And eventually, you don't have to weed anymore. Now, I remember that one very clearly. So thank you, Doug. So we're going to see his quarter-acre piece of land that he's using, basing on the principles of regeneration. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So Kyle's telling us to wrap it up. So I'll just mention for us in our context, we have a whole regenerative curriculum to learn what most people here know intuitively about how to integrate crops, about reconnection with nature, and as you said, deep field experience. There's no way to learn this without actually doing it. As I've learned, as I've been told many times, reminded by Hawaiians, you cannot learn this conceptually.
Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
You know, we keep telling ourselves about the alternatives. But I remember Kupuna told me, remember, they already altered the native. We have to go back to native, not alternative. And so the alternative is not helping us.
Yeah.
We have to get back to native.
Yeah, leave the natives alone.
Exactly, leave the natives. Let's go native.
Okay,
Wow.
well, thank you so much. If you have any questions about our curriculum, yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.